the lost cult of Mithras, Rome's mysterious underground religion. Hello and welcome back to Driftwood Histories. Tonight, our journey takes us deep underground, beneath the bustling streets and grand marble temples of the Roman Empire. We are not exploring the public lives of emperors or the great battles of legions. We are venturing into the secret, subterranean world of a mystery religion that, for 3 centuries, captured the hearts and minds of the very men who held the empire together. The soldiers, the merchants, and the administrators. This was a religion of darkness and light, of a sacred oath and a shared meal. A religion whose temples were not soaring basilicas, but man-made caves, and whose central, defining image was one of the most powerful and enigmatic in the ancient world. A young god, born from a rock, slaying a sacred bull in a cosmic sacrifice. This is the story of the cult of Mithras, Rome's most mysterious and exclusive underground religion. A brotherhood that left behind hundreds of beautiful, strange temples, but not a single sacred text to explain them. So, find your comfortable place. Let the clamor of our world fade into silence. Close your eyes, and allow my voice to be your guide as we descend into the Mithraeum, to piece together the clues, to decipher the symbols, and to explore the forgotten world of the followers of the unconquered sun god, Mithras. Our story begins not in Rome, but far to the east, in the ancient lands of Persia, with a god older than the empire that would one day worship him. To understand the story of the Roman god Mithras, we must begin our journey far from Rome, in a land of ancient empires and even older gods. Our story begins in the east, in the highlands of Persia and the plains of India, with a deity whose name has been whispered for thousands of years. Before he was the central figure of a Roman mystery cult, he was Mithra, with an ancient and powerful Indo-Iranian deity. His name appears in the oldest sacred texts of both India and Persia. In the Indian Vedas, the foundational scriptures of Hinduism dating back to the 2nd millennium BC, Mithra is a benevolent god, a divine being associated with contracts, friendship, and the light of the rising sun. He is a guardian of cosmic order, a god who ensures that oaths are kept and that truth prevails. But it was in ancient Persia, within the complex and sophisticated world of Zoroastrianism, that he found his most prominent early role. In the Avesta, the sacred texts of the Zoroastrians, Mithra is a Yazata, a divine being worthy of worship, a powerful lieutenant to the supreme creator god, Ahura Mazda. He is a god of light, a celestial warrior who rides across the sky in a golden chariot pulled by 4 white horses. He is the relentless enemy of Ahriman, the force of darkness, chaos, and lies. He is the god of the covenant, the sacred contract between men and God. He sees all, he hears all, and he cannot be deceived. He was a powerful and deeply respected figure in the Persian pantheon, but he was not the central god. He was a part of a larger, dualistic cosmic drama between light and darkness. For centuries, the worship of Mithra, in his various forms, remained largely confined to the Persian and Indian spheres of influence. So how did this ancient Persian god of light and contracts travel thousands of miles to become the central figure of a new, secretive, and intensely personal Roman mystery cult? A cult that, for a time, would become a major rival to early Christianity. The answer lies not in a single event, but in the slow, inexorable expansion of the Roman Empire itself. As Rome pushed its legions and its borders eastward in the 1st century BC and the 1st century AD, its soldiers, its traders, and its administrators came into direct and sustained contact with the diverse cultures of the East. In regions like Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, in Syria, in the client kingdom of Commagene, and along the frontiers of Mesopotamia, a vibrant and dynamic cultural exchange took place. This was a melting pot where Greek philosophy, Roman pragmatism, Babylonian astrology, and Persian mysticism all mingled and influenced one another. It is in this dynamic, syncretic environment that the Roman Mithras at the end seems to have been born. It is crucial to understand that the Roman cult of Mithras was not simply a transplant of the old Persian religion. It was something new, a uniquely Roman creation. It borrowed the name, the solar attributes, and the martial, honor-bound character of the Persian god, but it placed him at the center of a new and entirely different mythology, a new iconography, and a new system of secret rituals. The Roman Mithras was not the Mithra of the Avesta. He was a new god, born for a new empire. The first historical evidence of the Roman mysteries of Mithras appears surprisingly late, and with a rather infamous group of people. The Greek writer Plutarch, writing in the 1st century AD, mentions that the Cilician pirates, who terrorized the Mediterranean in the 60s BC, were practicing secret rites in honor of Mithras. These pirates, based on the coast of Anatolia, were eventually defeated by the Roman general Pompey the Great. It is possible that some of these defeated pirates, later incorporated into the Roman military or sold as slaves, may have carried the seeds of the cult with them into the heart of the empire. But the cult truly began to spread and flourish throughout the Roman Empire in the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD. Its rise was rapid and its geographical reach was remarkable. Archaeologists have unearthed hundreds of Mithraic temples, or Mithraea, across the length and breadth of the empire. They have been found in the bustling port of Ostia, the gateway to Rome, deep beneath the churches of the city of Rome itself, along the great river frontiers of the Rhine and the Danube in Germany and Romania, where the legions stood guard against barbarian tribes, and even in the cold, misty frontier of Hadrian's Wall in Britain, the northernmost edge of the Roman world. But who were its followers? The archaeological evidence, the inscriptions, the graffiti, the locations of the temples is overwhelmingly clear. Mithraism was, almost exclusively, a religion for men, and it was particularly and intensely popular among a specific demographic, the soldiers of the Roman army. The legionaries, the centurions, the high-ranking officers, they were the backbone of the cult. The religion's emphasis on hierarchy, on loyalty, on courage in the face of adversity, and on a brotherhood bound by a sacred oath resonated deeply with the military mindset. The 7 grades of initiation mirrored the hierarchical structure of the army itself. The central god, Mithras, was a warrior, a deus invictus, an unconquered god, a perfect deity for the men who prided themselves on being the unconquered soldiers of Rome. The cult was also popular among merchants, whose work involved travel, risk, and the sanctity of contracts, a domain long associated with the Persian Mitra. And it was popular among imperial bureaucrats and even some freedmen in the administrative class, men who were part of the vast, complex machinery of the empire and who valued its sense of order and structure. This was not a religion for the old senatorial Roman aristocracy, who remained devoted to the traditional Greco-Roman pantheon. Nor was it a mass religion for the poor and the marginalized like the early Christian movement. It was a religion for the middle strata of Roman society, for the ambitious, the dedicated, the men who did the hard, practical work of maintaining and defending the Roman world. It offered these men something that the public, state-sponsored religions of Rome often could not: a sense of personal salvation, a powerful and intimate bond of brotherhood, and a spiritual framework that celebrated the very virtues their professions demanded: duty, discipline, loyalty, and courage. But unlike the public, state-sponsored religions, with their grand, open-air temples and their massive public festivals, Mithraism was a mystery cult. This meant that its most profound teachings and its most sacred rituals were revealed only to its initiates, after they had taken a solemn vow of secrecy. And its worship did not take place in the great basilicas and temples that dotted the Roman landscape. It took place in secret, underground sanctuaries, in a hidden world, deliberately set apart from the public eye. This secrecy, this exclusivity was a core part of its appeal. It created a powerful sense of belonging, a shared identity among a select group of men. To be a follower of Mithras was to be part of a special brotherhood, to possess a secret knowledge that set you apart. It was to descend into a symbolic cave, into darkness, in order to find a personal and transformative light. To be a follower of Mithras was to leave the sunlit, public world behind and to descend, both literally and symbolically, into darkness in order to find the light. The temples of Mithras, known as Mithraea, or in the singular, a Mithraeum, were the physical embodiment of this journey. They were deliberately designed to be small, dark, and intensely intimate, a complete contrast to the grand, open-air temples of the official Roman state gods. Archaeologists have discovered hundreds of these sanctuaries across the empire, and they all share a remarkably consistent design. They were often built underground, in natural caves, or, more commonly, in the cellars and basements of city buildings and private homes. If no underground space was available, the followers would construct a dedicated building above ground, but one that was windowless and built to replicate the close, subterranean feeling of a cave. This cave-like setting was central to the cult's mythology, as it was believed that Mithras himself was born from a rocca petrogenitrix and that he had slain the sacred bull inside a cave. A typical Mithraeum was a long, narrow, rectangular chamber, often no more than 25 meters long. It had a vaulted ceiling, which was frequently painted a deep blue and dotted with plaster stars to represent the cosmos, the night sky. Down each of the long sides of the chamber were raised stone benches, covered with cushions, where the initiates would recline during their sacred ceremonies and their communal meals. The space was small, usually holding no more than 30 or 40 people at a time. This was a religion of small, tight-knit, local brotherhoods, not of massive, anonymous congregations. At the far end of this man-made cave in the apse, where one might expect to find an altar, stood the cult's central, defining, and deeply enigmatic image, the tauroctony or the bull-slaying scene. This powerful and complex relief, carved in stone or sometimes painted as a fresco, is found in nearly every Mithraeum ever discovered, from Britain to Syria. It is a masterwork of complex astrological and cosmological symbolism, and it is our primary key to understanding the secrets of the faith. In the center of the scene, the young god Mithras is depicted in the midst of a dynamic and powerful act. He is youthful and strong, dressed in a distinctive Anatolian-style tunic and a soft, pointed Phrygian cap, a symbol of Eastern origin. His cape, or cloak, often billows out behind him, and its inner lining is frequently depicted as a celestial map of the stars. He kneels on the back of a powerful white bull, pulling its head back with one hand and, with the other, plunging a short dagger or sword into its neck. His face is often turned away from the act, looking back over his shoulder towards the figure of Sol, the sun god. This is not an act of brutal, angry slaughter. It is a reluctant, necessary, and sacred sacrifice. But Mithras and the bull are not alone. They are surrounded by a host of symbolic animals, each playing a specific role in this cosmic drama. A dog and a snake leap up towards the bull's wound, seeming to drink the life-giving blood that pours from it. A scorpion attacks the bull's genitals, a detail of profound astrological significance. A raven, the traditional messenger of the sun god, is perched near Mithras, either watching the scene or whispering a message into his ear. And often, a lion and a mixing bowl are also present in the composition. In a final, beautiful piece of symbolism, the bull's tail often ends not in a tuft of hair, but in an ear of wheat, a clear symbol of life, nourishment, and resurrection emerging from the act of death. The entire scene is framed by two other figures. On the top corners are the busts of Sol, the sun god, often depicted with a radiant crown, and Luna, the moon goddess, with a crescent moon. And standing on either side of the central scene are two mysterious, torch-bearing figures, who look like miniature versions of Mithras himself. They are Kots and Kotopates. Kots, on the left, holds his torch raised upwards, a symbol of the dawn, of light, of life, and of the spring equinox. Kotopates, on the right, holds his torch pointed downwards, a symbol of dusk, of darkness, of death, and of the autumn equinox. Together, they represent the eternal cycle of day and night, of life and death, of the rising and setting of the sun. What does this complex and violent scene mean? For centuries, scholars have debated its significance. Unlike Christianity or Judaism, the Mithraic cult has left us no sacred texts, no Gospels of Mithras, no written explanations of their beliefs. Our entire understanding must be painstakingly reconstructed from this silent, stone-carved imagery and the fragmentary clues left behind in their temples. The first major theory, proposed by the great Belgian scholar Frans Cumont in the early 20th century, was that the Tauroctony was a literal representation of a lost Persian myth, a story that had been passed down orally but had never been written down. But modern scholarship has moved in a different, and perhaps more fascinating direction. The current dominant theory, championed by scholars like David Ulanzi, is that the Tauroctony is not a narrative of an event, but an astronomical star map. In this compelling view, the figures in the scene correspond directly to a specific set of constellations. The bull represents the constellation of Taurus. The dog represents Canis Minor. The snake represents Hydra. The scorpion represents Scorpio. The raven represents Corvus. And the lion represents Leo. These are all the constellations that lay on the celestial equator during the historical age of Taurus, which lasted from roughly 4000 to 2000 BC. The act of Mithras slaying the bull, therefore, is a powerful, symbolic representation of a great cosmic event that was discovered by the ancient Greeks, the precession of the equinoxes. This is the slow, 26,000-year wobble of the Earth's axis, which causes the position of the stars to gradually shift over centuries. Around 2000 BC, the celestial pole shifted, and the spring equinox moved out of the constellation of Taurus and into the constellation of Aries. The slaying of the bull, in this interpretation, is a grand metaphor for the god Mithras being powerful enough to shift the entire cosmic pole, to turn the great wheel of the universe itself. He is not just a sun god. He is the master of the cosmos, the one who controls the eternal turning of the stars. Initiation into the cult involved a progression through 7 hierarchical grades or degrees. We know the names of these grades from paintings and graffiti found in Mithria. Each grade was under the special protection of one of the 7 planetary deities and had its own symbolic costume and duties within the cult. They were 1. Coryx, the raven, protected by Mercury, the messenger. 2. Nymphus, the bridegroom or perhaps bee, protected by Venus. 3. Miles, the soldier, protected by Mars, a particularly popular grade. 4. Leo, the lion, protected by Jupiter, the king of the gods. 5. Perses, the Persian, protected by the moon. 6. Heliodromus, the sunrunner, protected by the sun, Sol. 7. And the highest and most respected grade, the Pater, the father, protected by Saturn, the ancient god of time. The initiation rituals for these grades were likely intense and theatrical. While no ritual texts survive, Ancient Christian writers who condemned the cult, and archaeological evidence from the Mithria themselves, give us clues. They involved tests of courage and endurance. An initiate might be blindfolded, bound, and led through a series of symbolic trials. There are depictions of initiates being hunted with a bow and arrow, or facing a ritual death by a sword, only to be reborn into the new grade. These were not just ceremonies. They were powerful psychological ordeals designed to forge an unbreakable bond between the initiate and his new brothers, and to instill in him the central virtues of the cult: loyalty, discipline, and courage. At the very heart of Mithraic worship was a communal, sacred meal. The initiates would recline on the stone benches that lined the Mithraeum and share a ritual feast of bread and wine, a ceremony that has drawn many obvious comparisons to the Christian Eucharist. This meal was a sacred commemoration of the feast shared by Mithras and the sun god, Sol, after the great sacrifice of the bull. It was an act of communion, a way of partaking in the life-giving power that flowed from Mithras's cosmic act. The appeal of the cult to the soldiers of the Roman army is easy to understand. It was a religion of order, of a clear hierarchy, of unwavering loyalty to one's comrades and to one's commander, the pater. It promised a form of personal salvation and a blessed afterlife for those who lived a life of discipline and duty on the harsh frontiers of the empire. And its secret, all-male nature created a powerful and exclusive band of brothers, which would have been deeply appealing to men living, fighting, and dying together, far from home. For over 2 centuries, the mysteries of Mithras flourished in the shadows of the official Roman state religion. It was a powerful, private faith that offered its followers a sense of personal connection to the divine, a structured, hierarchical path to salvation, and an unbreakable bond of brotherhood. But it was not the only mystery religion competing for the souls of the empire. Another, more inclusive and ultimately more successful faith, born in the province of Judea, was also spreading with remarkable speed. A faith that worshipped not a bull slayer, but a crucified savior. For much of the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD, the Roman Empire was a vibrant and often competitive marketplace of religions. While the traditional Greco-Roman pantheon remained the official state religion, a host of mystery cults and new faiths vied for the hearts and minds of the people. And in this spiritual arena, 2 of the most dynamic and rapidly growing movements were the mysteries of Mithras and the new, burgeoning faith of Christianity. On the surface, they had a surprising, and to the early church fathers, a deeply unsettling number of similarities. This did not go unnoticed by Christian writers like Justin Martyr and Tertullian, who, in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, fiercely condemned Mithraism. They did not dismiss it as mere pagan superstition. They saw it as a sinister and deliberate diabolical counterfeit of their own faith, a work of demons designed to mimic and mock Christian truths. Consider the parallels. Both religions had a central savior figure, a son of God, who was part of a divine trinity. In Mithraism, this was often seen as Mithras, Sol, and a third entity. Both had complex initiation rites, which included a form of baptism for the purification of sin. Both held the sacred, communal meal of bread and wine, a form of Eucharist. Both preached of a final judgment, a heaven for the righteous, and a hell for the wicked. And, most strikingly, both celebrated the birth of their central deity on December 25th. The birthday of Mithras, as Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, was celebrated on the winter solstice, the day when, after the shortest, darkest day of the year, the light of the sun begins to return and grow stronger. It was a powerful symbol of rebirth and salvation. It was only in the 4th century that the Christian Church, in an effort to co-opt this hugely popular pagan festival, officially placed the birth of Jesus on the same date. Christmas, as we know it, likely has Mithraic roots. But despite these surface similarities, the differences between the 2 faiths were profound, and they would ultimately prove decisive in the battle for the soul of the empire. The greatest strength of Mithraism was also its greatest and most fatal weakness: its exclusivity. By being a religion exclusively for men, it immediately cut itself off from half the population. Women, who were often the most dedicated patrons, organizers, and converters in the early Christian communities, had no place in the Mithraeum. They could not be initiated, they could not participate in the sacred meals, they could not find a spiritual home in the cult of the unconquered sun. Furthermore, Mithraism was a religion with a high barrier to entry. Its complex astrological and philosophical doctrines likely appealed to a literate, educated class. Its hierarchical structure and emphasis on discipline resonated with the military and administrative classes. But it offered little to the poor, the marginalized, the enslaved, and the downtrodden. Christianity, on the other hand, was, from its very beginning, a religion with a radically universal message. Its promise of salvation was open to everyone, regardless of their gender, their social status, or their education. It offered comfort to the poor, a sense of community to the marginalized, and a message of profound hope to the enslaved. It was, in the end, a more adaptable, more inclusive, and more emotionally resonant faith for the great masses of the Roman world. The decline of Mithraism began in the 4th century, a period of dramatic and violent transformation for the Roman Empire. The political landscape was changing. The empire was beset by internal strife and external threats, and a new kind of emperor was about to take the throne. In the early part of the century, the Emperor Constantine rose to power. In 312 AD, on the eve of the decisive Battle of the Milvian Bridge, Constantine allegedly had a vision of a Christian symbol in the sky. The Chironde heard the words, "In hoc signo vinces," in this sign you will conquer. After his victory, he converted to Christianity. With the Edict of Milan in 313 AD, which he issued with his co-emperor Licinius, he granted religious tolerance throughout the empire, officially ending the state-sponsored persecution of Christians. But this new era of tolerance was, for the old pagan cults, a double-edged sword. As Christianity grew in power and influence, becoming the favored religion of the imperial court and the Roman elite, the old faiths came under increasing social and political pressure. The final, decisive blow came in the late 4th century, under the rule of the devoutly and fanatically Christian Emperor Theodosius I. In a series of edicts issued between 389 and 392 AD, Theodosius made Christianity the one and only official state religion of the Roman Empire. He outlawed all other pagan practices. Public sacrifice was forbidden. The ancient temples of the Greco-Roman gods were ordered to be closed. The sacred flame of the Vestal Virgins in Rome was extinguished. The Olympic Games, which had been celebrated for over 1,000 years, were abolished. The Mithraea, the secret underground sanctuaries of the unconquered sun, were abandoned, sealed up, or, in some cases, deliberately and violently destroyed by Christian mobs, who saw them as dens of demonic worship. A Mithraeum discovered beneath the Basilica of San Clemente in Rome shows clear signs of having been violently desecrated by Christians, its central Tauroctony relief smashed to pieces. Another famous Mithraeum, found on the Aventine Hill in Rome, seems to have been deliberately filled with earth and rubble, burying it forever. Mithraism, a religion that had thrived on secrecy and the loyalty of its small, private brotherhoods, could not survive in a new world where its very existence was now illegal and actively persecuted. It did not have the vast, public, institutional structure of the Christian Church, with its network of bishops, its public basilicas, and its codified scriptures. And this is perhaps the most crucial point. The Mithraic cult left behind no sacred texts. Its most profound doctrines, its rituals, its theology, were passed down orally, from the pater to the initiate, in the darkness of the symbolic cave. It was a wisdom that was lived, not written. And when the last pater died, when the last initiation was performed, when the last sacred meal was shared, the secrets of Mithras died with them. The cult of the bull-slaying god, a faith that had once been a powerful force on the frontiers and in the heart of the Roman Empire, faded into oblivion with astonishing speed. For over 1,000 years, it was almost completely forgotten, a lost and silent chapter in the rich religious history of the ancient world. It was only in the Renaissance, and more significantly, with the birth of modern archaeology in the 19th and 20th centuries, that the lost, subterranean world of Mithras was rediscovered. As archaeologists began to unearth Mithraea across Europe, from the ruins of Roman London to the ancient port of Ostia, the enigmatic and beautiful image of the Tauroctony was brought back into the light. But with no text to explain it, it remained a profound and beautiful puzzle. We are left with silent stones, with powerful images, and with more questions than answers. What was the true nature of their 7 grades of initiation? What were the secret words spoken in the darkness of the cave? What was the true meaning of their sacred meal? We can speculate, we can interpret the rich astrological symbolism, but we can never know for certain. The vow of silence, kept so faithfully by the initiates of Mithras for centuries, was, in the end, kept forever. The legacy of Mithraism is a subtle and ghostly one. It left no gospels, no great works of literature, but it did leave behind a powerful and influential idea, that of a secret, hierarchical, initiatory brotherhood, a band of brothers bound by a sacred oath and a shared, transformative spiritual experience. It is a model that we have seen echoed in other secret societies throughout history, from the Knights Templar to the Freemasons. And it left us with a haunting and beautiful mystery, a reminder that the ancient world was filled with rich and complex spiritual paths that have been lost to time, with gods whose names we no longer speak. The cult of Mithras is a ghost in the ruins of Rome, a testament to a powerful, personal faith that once gave hope and meaning to the soldiers who built and defended an empire, before it vanished, like a flickering torch, into the inevitable twilight. And so our journey into the subterranean world of the ancient mystery schools comes to its conclusion. We began our voyage on the sun-drenched coast of Greece, and we ended here, in the cool, silent ruins of the Roman Empire. We have walked the sacred way to Eleusis, and we have descended, in our imagination, into the man-made caves of the followers of Mithras. We began with the story of Demeter and Persephone, the great Homeric myth that formed the heart of the Eleusinian mysteries. We followed the procession of thousands of initiates, the Mysti, from Athens to the sacred sanctuary, and we stood with them in the darkness of the great Telesterion. We contemplated the mystery of the Kykeon, the sacred potion that may have opened the doors of perception, and we witnessed the final, profound revelation. A single, reaped ear of grain, a symbol of the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth. For nearly 2,000 years, Eleusis offered its followers a blessed hope, a promise that the soul, like the grain, would rise again. Then, our journey took us into a different kind of sanctuary, the secret underground Mithraeum. We traced the origins of the god Mithras, from the ancient Persian Mithra, a god of light and contracts, to the new, powerful Roman deity, Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. We saw how this cult, with its emphasis on loyalty, hierarchy, and courage, became the chosen faith of the Roman legions, spreading with them to the furthest frontiers of the empire. We stood before the Tauroctony, the enigmatic and powerful image of Mithras slaying the bull, and we deciphered its hidden meaning not as a simple myth, but as a complex astronomical star map, a depiction of the god's power to turn the very cosmos itself. We followed the path of the initiate through the 7 grades of the cult, from the raven to the father, and we saw how its sacred meal of bread and wine created an unbreakable bond of brotherhood. But we also witnessed the inevitable twilight of these ancient faiths. We saw how the rise of Christianity, with its universal message and its powerful institutional structure, presented a challenge that the exclusive all-male cult of Mithras could not overcome. And we saw how, in the late 4th century, the decrees of the Christian emperor Theodosius I outlawed all pagan worship, closing the temples, extinguishing the sacred fires, and forcing the mystery cults to fade into silence and oblivion. So what do these 2 great, and now lost, religions tell us? They show us that the ancient world was not a monolith. Beneath the surface of the public, state-sponsored religions of Greece and Rome, there existed a rich, diverse, and deeply personal landscape of spiritual seeking. The mystery schools offered their followers something that the grand civic cults often could not: a personal, direct, and deeply emotional connection to the divine. They were not religions of passive belief. They were religions of experience. To be an initiate at Eleusis was not just to hear a story, but to live it, to feel the grief of Demeter and the joy of Persephone's return in your own soul. To be a follower of Mithras was not just to worship a god, but to become a brother in a sacred army, to share a meal that bound you to your comrades and to the cosmos itself. They are a reminder that for as long as humanity has contemplated the great, universal mysteries of life and death, we have created secret paths, hidden rituals, and silent sanctuaries to explore them. The temples are now ruins, the gods are silent, and the vows of secrecy have been kept forever. But the questions they asked about the nature of the soul, about the meaning of existence, about the hope for life beyond the grave still echo in the quiet chambers of our own hearts. Thank you for joining me on this voyage with Driftwood Histories. If these stories have stirred your curiosity and soothed your mind, I invite you to subscribe and join our community of fellow travelers. There are many more hidden currents of time, many more secret histories, for us to explore together. Until then, sleep well. May you find your own light in the darkness, and may your dreams be filled with a sense of enduring wonder. Good night.